The 911 operator kept telling me to stay calm as a man chased me, right up until he cornered me in a convenience store and showed me his badge. The only sounds were my shoes slapping against the wet asphalt and the horrible, wet tearing in my own lungs. I had the phone clamped to my ear so hard it ached, the plastic slick with sweat. On the other end of the line, a woman's voice was as smooth and calm as a river stone. "Sir, I need you to calm down. I can't understand you when you're screaming." "Calm down," I gasped, risking a look over my shoulder. He was still there, maybe 50 yards back. He wasn't even sprinting, just moving at this relentless ground-eating pace that was somehow 1,000 times more terrifying. "There's a man chasing me. For God's sake, his name is Gareth, and he's going to kill me." "Okay, sir, I understand you're frightened, but for me to dispatch a unit, I need your location. Can you see any street signs across street?" I choked on a sob that was half exhaustion, half pure, unadulterated terror. "I don't know. I took a wrong turn. It's dark. I don't know this neighborhood. I'm just running. Can't you just trace the call? Isn't that a thing?" My voice cracked on the last word. "Every horror movie, every TV show, they just trace the call. It's simple." But my life apparently wasn't a movie. "We are attempting to get a lock on your signal, sir," she said, with the same emotional investment as someone reading a grocery list. "But the signal is bouncing. It would be much faster if you could provide a clear landmark, a business name, a church." It felt like I was drowning, and the lifeguard was asking me to fill out paperwork. I risked another look back. He'd closed the distance. 30 yards, maybe. I could make out the shape of him now, tall and broad, a shadow detaching itself from the other shadows of the night. He wasn't yelling, he wasn't making a sound, he was just coming. "He's getting closer," I whispered into the phone, my legs starting to feel like lead pipes. "Please. Please, you have to help me." "Sir, I need you to focus. Panicking will not resolve the situation. Take a deep breath for me." I swear to God, in that moment I hated her more than I hated Gareth. She wasn't helping, she was a barrier, a placid, bureaucratic wall between me and survival. It felt like the whole world had conspired to tell me my fear wasn't real, that I was just being hysterical. Then I saw it, up ahead maybe 100 yards away, a splash of fluorescent light against the oppressive dark, a beacon, a 24-hour convenience store. Hope, sharp and painful, lanced through my chest. "A store," I panted into the phone. "I see a store, a stop and sip or something, I'm going for it." "Okay, sir, that's good." "Head for the store," I'm noting it down, "stop and sip." I didn't wait for her to say anything else. I poured every last ounce of adrenaline I had into my legs. The world narrowed to that glowing rectangle of safety. The burning in my lungs was volcanic. My vision started to swim at the edges. The little bell above the door chimed as I slammed into it, a ridiculously cheerful sound in the middle of my nightmare. I stumbled inside, collapsing against a rack of potato chips, the crinkling bags the only proof I was still in the real world. I was safe. I was finally safe. I scrambled to my feet, my back pressed hard against the chip display, my chest heaving so violently I thought my ribs might crack. The air inside was sterile and cold, smelling of stale coffee and floor cleaner. A young guy with tired eyes and a name tag that read Omar looked up from his phone behind the counter, his expression shifting from boredom to alarm. "Dude, you okay?" he asked, already reaching for the phone under the counter. I couldn't form words. I just pointed a shaking finger towards the glass door. And right on cue, the cheerful little bell chimed again. Gareth stepped inside. He didn't look like a monster. That was the most sickening part. He looked like someone's dad. Maybe a high school gym teacher. He had thinning brown hair, a plain gray jacket, and the kind of face you'd forget a second after seeing it. But his eyes were not normal. They were flat, devoid of any emotion, and they were locked directly onto me. He took one step inside, letting the door whisper shut behind him, and the entire brightly lit store suddenly felt as small and as dangerous as a locked closet. Omar, to his credit, stood up straight. "Hey man, you need to leave him alone. I'm calling the cops." Gareth didn't even glance at him. He just kept his gaze fixed on me, a gaze that felt like it was pinning me to the wall. My heart was a frantic bird beating against my ribs. I was trapped. The chase was over. This was it. And then the voice from my phone, still clutched in my hand, spoke with infuriating clarity. "Sir, we have a confirmed location. An officer has just arrived on the scene." I stared at my phone, then at Gareth. The words made no sense. They were from two different realities that had just violently collided. Gareth moved his hand, but it wasn't for a weapon. He reached inside his gray jacket, slow and deliberate. For a horrifying second, I thought he was going to show me a gun, a final, brutal confirmation of my fears. But what he pulled out was small, dark, and metallic. He cupped it in his palm and held it out, not just for me to see, but for Omar too. It was a badge. A polished, honest-to-God police badge gleaming under the harsh fluorescent lights of the convenience store. My blood ran cold. The terror of the chase was nothing compared to this. This was a different kind of fear, a dizzying, world-tilting horror. The man who had hunted me through the dark, silent streets, the man I was certain was going to murder me, was a cop. The monster was the rescuer. The 911 operator's calm, detached voice suddenly replayed in my head, no longer sounding like incompetence but like coordination. "Sir," she had said, "an officer has just arrived." I looked from the badge in his hand to his dead, empty eyes, and I understood that I had never been running to the police. I had been running from them. Gareth didn't say a word to me. He held the badge for a few seconds longer, a silent, declarative statement that hung in the air like poison gas. He gave Omar a curt, almost imperceptible nod, a gesture of dismissal, as if the kid behind the counter was nothing more than a piece of furniture. Then his eyes met mine one last time. There was no malice in them, no anger, just a profound, chilling emptiness. It was the look of a man confirming a task was complete. He turned, the little bell chimed its happy tune once more, and he was gone, disappearing back into the same darkness he had emerged from. I was left standing there, trembling, the phone still pressed to my ear. The line was dead, she had hung up. Omar slowly lowered his own phone. "Holy crap," he breathed, his eyes wide. "What did you do?" I don't know," I stammered, the words feeling like ash in my mouth. The adrenaline was gone, replaced by a creeping, glacial dread. I stumbled out of the store, refusing Omar's offer to sit down to drink some water. I didn't want his kindness. I didn't want his memory of my face, I just wanted to disappear. The walk home was a blur, every shadow seemed to hold a figure, every distant siren made my heart seize. The world that had seemed solid and understandable an hour ago was now made of cracked glass. I got inside my apartment and bolted the door, leaning against it as my legs finally gave out. I spent the rest of the night and most of the next day replaying the entire event in a torturous loop. Why would a police officer chase me like that? Not with sirens and a shout of "police, stop," but like a predator hunting prey, silently, relentlessly. And the 911 operator, her calmness wasn't incompetence. It was control. She wasn't trying to help me, she was managing me. Keeping me on the line, keeping me panicked and running in a predictable line until her colleague could, what? Intercept me, terrify me into silence. Nothing made sense, I hadn't done anything wrong. I was a data analyst for a mid-level insurance company. My life was a monument to boring, predictable routine. I paid my taxes, I had never even had a speeding ticket. There was no reason for any of this. The lack of reason was the most terrifying part. It felt like I had accidentally seen behind a curtain I wasn't supposed to know existed. I had glimpsed the wiring of the world and found it was all wrong. The people you call for help are the ones you should be running from. The system designed to protect you is the very thing that will hunt you in the dark. I started to question everything. Was I going crazy? Did I imagine the whole thing? Was this some kind of elaborate, cruel prank? But the memory of that badge gleaming under the store lights was seared into my brain. It was real, which meant the nightmare was real too. I was alone, with a secret I didn't even understand, and the terrifying knowledge that the people with the badges and the authority knew who I was, and knew where I lived. I couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat. I just sat in my darkened apartment, jumping at every creak of the floorboards, my mind racing. I did the only thing a person in the 21st century does when they feel completely alone and terrified. I posted about it online, anonymously of course, on a forum dedicated to strange and unsettling personal experiences. I typed out the whole story, my fingers shaking, and hit submit. The replies came in fast, a lot of them were what you'd expect. "You're paranoid, sounds like a psychotic break, cool story bro," but a few people seemed to get it. They asked questions, smart questions. One user, screen name Plank Constant, wrote, "They didn't chase you for no reason, you had to have seen something, think, go back before the chase. What did you do, where were you? Every single detail matters." His comment stuck with me. I had been so focused on the terror of the chase itself, I hadn't really thought about the minutes leading up to it. It was just a normal Tuesday. I'd stayed late at work trying to finish up a quarterly report. My office is in a renovated warehouse district, a mix of trendy lofts and old, grimy industrial buildings. I closed my eyes and forced myself to walk through it again, leaving the office. The click of the heavy steel door behind me, the smell of damp brick and diesel in the air. I took the shortcut through the back alley like I always do. It's poorly lit, but it shaves 5 minutes off my walk to the bus stop, and that's when it hit me. A memory, small and insignificant at the time, now felt like it was lit up in neon. As I rounded the corner by the big, overflowing dumpsters for the Gilded Steer restaurant, I saw two men. They were standing in the shadows, partially obscured by a cloud of steam from a ventilation grate. One of them was Gareth. He wasn't wearing his gray jacket then. He had on a dark windbreaker. The other man, I knew him. Not personally, but I knew who he was. His name was Roman Petrovic, a local businessman whose face was occasionally in the news for all the wrong reasons: zoning disputes, union busting, rumored ties to organized crime. A real piece of work. They weren't talking, it was an exchange, quick and silent. Petrovic passed a thick, worn leather briefcase to Gareth. Gareth passed back a simple manila envelope. They didn't shake hands, they didn't even make eye contact for more than a second. The whole thing was over in less time than it takes to tie your shoes. I didn't think anything of it. It was just background noise in the city. I kept my head down and walked past them, my footsteps echoing in the narrow alley. I remember Gareth's head snapping up as I passed. He saw me. His eyes locked on mine for just a second. I didn't register a threat, I just registered that I'd been seen. I kept walking, turned the corner, and a minute later I heard the footsteps behind me. That's when I started running. My blood turned to ice. It wasn't random. I wasn't a victim of some bizarre, citywide police training exercise. I was a witness. I had seen a cop, a man I now knew was named Gareth, taking a briefcase from a notorious gangster in a dark alley, and they knew I'd seen it. The chase, the 911 call, the badge in the convenience store, it wasn't an arrest. It was a message, a demonstration of power, a warning delivered in the most terrifying way imaginable. That realization didn't make me feel better, it made everything infinitely worse. Before, it was a terrifying, senseless event. Now it had a logic, a cold, brutal logic that implicated not just one man, but a whole system I was supposed to trust. The paranoia that had been a low hum in the back of my mind now became a deafening roar. Life became a prison of hypervigilance. Every car that idled for too long on my street was one of them. Every time my phone made a faint click during a call, it was a tap. I started taking different routes to work, avoiding the alley, avoiding the entire district where I'd seen them if I could help it. I felt like a hunted animal, constantly looking over my shoulder, my nervous system frayed to the point of breaking. The subtle signs started about a week later. They were masters of psychological warfare, I'll give them that. Nothing overt, nothing I could ever prove. One morning, I found a single, perfectly round, polished river stone sitting on the doormat outside my apartment. It wasn't there the night before. It meant nothing, and yet it meant everything. It was a message: we can get to your front door, we can leave things for you, we can touch your world whenever we want. Another time, my mail was delivered with the envelopes all facing the wrong way. A tiny, insignificant detail, something anyone would dismiss as a mail carrier's mistake, but I knew. It was another nudge, another reminder that my private spaces were not private. The worst was the visit. Two uniformed officers, neither of them Gareth, knocked on my door one evening. My heart nearly exploded out of my chest. They were polite, professional, all smiles. They said they were conducting a community safety survey in the building. They asked me a series of bland, scripted questions. Have you noticed any suspicious activity in the area recently? Do you feel safe in your neighborhood? Is there anything you feel the department should be aware of? The entire conversation was a master class in veiled threats. Every question was a test. Every pleasantry was a razor blade wrapped in silk. As they were leaving, one of them paused in the doorway, his hand on the frame. "You know," he said, his smile never wavering, "it's a dangerous world out there. It's so important for citizens and the police to have a good, cooperative relationship. We look out for you, you look out for us. That's how we keep things peaceful." He held my gaze for just a second too long, a silent message passing between us. "We know you saw something, and you know that we know. Be a good, cooperative citizen, keep things peaceful." They left. I closed the door and slid to the floor, my body shaking uncontrollably. This was my life now. I was living inside a silent, invisible cage. They weren't going to arrest me or hurt me, not in a way that would leave marks. They were going to let me live, but they were going to own my peace of mind. They were going to hollow me out from the inside until all that was left was fear. The chase in the alley was just the beginning. This slow, methodical dismantling of my sanity, this was the real punishment. I saw Gareth one last time, about a month after the chase. The constant, low-grade terror had become my new normal. I had settled into a routine of fear, my world shrinking to the path between my apartment and my office cubicle. I was in the sterile, fluorescent-lit aisle of a large grocery store, staring blankly at a wall of cereal boxes when I felt a presence beside me. I turned and my heart stopped. It was him. He was in full uniform this time. The dark blue fabric was neatly pressed, the badge on his chest gleamed under the overhead lights. He looked so official, so respectable. He was holding a small carton of milk in his hand, as if he were just another person running an errand. He turned his head and looked directly at me. A slow, lazy smile spread across his face. It was the first expression I had ever seen on him, and it was 1,000 times more terrifying than the blankness. It was the smile of a predator that knows its prey is utterly, hopelessly trapped. He took a step closer, invading my personal space. The scent of cheap coffee was on his breath. He leaned in as if to share a friendly secret. "Everything all right?" he asked, his voice a low, almost pleasant rumble. "You look a little jumpy." I couldn't speak. My throat was a knot of pure ice. I just stared at him, at the badge, at the gun holstered on his hip. All the symbols of safety and order now twisted into instruments of my own personal hell. He must have seen the terror in my eyes because his smile widened. He reached out a hand, not to grab me, not to hurt me, but to pat my shoulder. It was a gesture that was meant to look friendly, reassuring to any casual observer. But to me, the weight of his hand was like a tombstone. It was a gesture of ownership. "The neighborhood's been quiet lately, hasn't it?" he said, his voice dropping to a near whisper meant only for me. "Hope you haven't run into any more trouble." And that was it. The final piece. It wasn't just a warning anymore, it was an offer, a deal. He was telling me in no uncertain terms that my trouble was something he could turn on or off at will. My safety was a privilege, not a right, and it was entirely in his hands. He gave my shoulder one last, firm squeeze, then took his hand away. He nodded, turned, and walked down the aisle toward the checkout, the carton of milk swinging gently in his hand. He was just a cop buying milk, and I was just a man buying cereal. And in that silent, brightly lit grocery store aisle, I had been shown the true, terrifying face of the world, and I knew I could never, ever speak of it again. Update: hey everyone. Thanks for all the comments and the support. A lot of you have been asking what happened next. It's been a few days. I just wanted to let you all know that everything is fine now. It turns out the whole thing was a big misunderstanding. I spoke with the police department. The officer, Gareth, was involved in a high-stakes undercover operation that night, and I inadvertently stumbled into the middle of it. For operational security, they couldn't break cover. They were very apologetic about the distress it caused me. We've cleared the air, it all makes sense now. So yeah, everything is okay. I'd appreciate it if we could all just drop this. Please don't share this post anymore. It was just a crazy, mixed-up night. Thanks again for your concern.